I, 17M, think my uncle/guardian, 50SM, is afraid to tell me he's gay. My parents died when I was younger, so my uncle raised me, mostly on his own. When I was younger he was engaged to a woman, but that was about it. Obviously for a long time I didn't think about it as a kid, but when I got older I started thinking he might be gay. There's also this guy John. I don't know him that well, but like he's visited us 1 to 2 times a year over the years, even though we live on the opposite coast. We'll usually hang out all 3 of us like at a movie, or my uncle will get tickets for something, but he and John will spend time together too. There's just this weird vibe between them. Sometimes I don't know why they're friends, because they don't like laugh or talk about the good old days with each other. My uncle is kind of uptight around him. They just seem to talk alone a lot. I've also noticed that when we see my grandparents, my uncle will never be like, "Oh, my friend John is spending the weekend with us." And this is really embarrassing, but John does this thing where he sends out a little email newsletter to my grandparents and older relatives with like pictures and updates, but I've noticed John is never mentioned there either. The other day I had his phone for something and I noticed a ton of messages between him and John. I didn't see anything but the last few texts, but just noticed the conversation was really large. But then he saw me looking and took his phone back and didn't say anything. I knew he knew I'd seen it, so I said something like, "Oh, it's cool that you talk. How do you know each other again?" And he gave me a vague answer. And I've been thinking about it since that happened and realized I don't even know that much about John. I think he might have a daughter and he's like showed me some of his hobbies, but I don't know anything about like his life or how he knows my uncle. And like it's weird for him to fly 3k miles multiple times per year to visit in person, right? Would it be weird to say something to my uncle? I feel bad, and even though we live in a liberal area, our family is semi-religious with lots of older relatives. I feel like I want him to know that I support him specifically. Because sometimes people say they're fine with LGBTQ people, but then they don't really mean it. And I know it's his choice, but it also kind of bugs me that he doesn't feel like he can share his own life with me. I'm 17, not 7. Too long didn't read. I think my uncle might be gay. Should I talk to him about it? As a queer person in a very conservative environment, do not bring it up. Do not talk to your uncle or John or anyone else about whether or not they are together. If he wants to tell you, he'll tell you. If you want him to know that you won't be weird about them being together, which they might or might not be, who knows, then just drop some pro-LGBT stuff here and there. Talk about supporting an LGBT friend, or liking a queer couple on TV, or whatever. But don't be on the nose about any of it, just keep it on the DL. Good luck, my dude. I'm a good bit older and I had a lovely uncle who was gay, but he was from the silent generation. He did the thing where he married a woman as a cover, it didn't work out, and then had a roommate for the rest of his life. I knew he was gay, but he never came out. He just wasn't comfortable with it. You can share your support without having to out him. Were I you, I might say, I'm glad you have someone like John in your life. I hope you know that he can visit any time. It's nice seeing you happy. This is pretty similar to how I handled my own uncle a few decades ago. You can show your support and your permission without forcing him to have a conversation he may not be comfortable with. It seems to me that even if your uncle is gay, which emo is pretty likely but far from certain, that would only be one aspect of the true answer to the question of what's the deal with your uncle and John. Don't take this the wrong way, but my gut feeling is that if he hasn't explained whatever is going on with the two of them yet, there's probably some aspect to it that would be hard to understand for someone who hasn't experienced adult life, and I would urge you not to push him on it. Having said that, it would probably be a good idea to make a point of being supportive of the LGBTQ community to show that you wouldn't react negatively if someone in your life came out to you. I've read through your replies here, I think you're a very kind person who cares about your uncle and wants to share life with your uncle and make sure he feels supported. I would drop little LGBTQ positivity around. Maybe watch that show Queer Eye in the living room, mention a friend of yours coming out as bi and how it makes you so happy he is living his truth, etc. Also, if you're like me, my family had a hard time sharing anything about dating and relationships. I had a really hard time talking to my parents about my own love life. Try to approach your uncle about this and just talk about your own love life. Hey uncle, I was thinking about asking this girl to the dance. I think she would like a big gesture. I'm thinking of asking her friends to help me surprise her or like whatever it is. Involve your uncle as a person you go to for advice or even just as a sounding board for your own problems. This might help break the tension around love and relationships and what you two are comfortable talking about. One day that level of conversation might let him feel comfortable talking to you about that. And I know it's his choice, but it also kind of bugs me that he doesn't feel like he can share his own life with me. I'm 17 not 7. So if he has been raised by a religious family, and people can be homophobic without being religious, it's probable that if he is gay he doesn't want to lose his family over it. Also, if he's been raising you alone, he's worried that someone might accuse him of touching you. People love to accuse gay people of being pedophiles. Oh, please understand that if he is gay, and that's if, he might feel too much pressure from his whole environment to admit it to anyone, and it's nothing to do with you personally. My 27F best friend, 27F, abandoned me for my ex, 27M, and his friends when we broke up. Now that we're back together, she wants to reconnect. Cindy and I were best friends since we were young. Our parents are also close friends. I started dating Luke during uni. Naturally, I introduced him to Cindy, and we used to invite her along whenever we hung out with his friends. 2 years after graduating, Luke and I broke up. For the first 2 weeks, Cindy pretended to be there for me, but slowly she started pulling away. Eventually, she just stopped responding to me. She blocked me from her social media but claimed she had deactivated her accounts. A mutual friend of mine and Luke's eventually told me she was still hanging around with Luke and his friends. I was devastated because I felt like she had abandoned me for people she saw as an upgrade. It also hurt when my mum would mention all of the cool places/events Cindy was going to and asking me why I never wanted to go with her. She made it seem like I stopped talking to her to our parents. Luke and I reconnected last September and have been dating again since January. We decided to take things slow, so we barely told anyone that we were back together. Last week, Luke was video chatting with some of his friends. Cindy was in the chat. I walked past while he was talking to them and everyone asked if we were back together. We told the truth since it would be weird for me to be staying with him otherwise. Anyway, a few minutes after the chat, Cindy sent me a message saying it was so nice to see me after so long and we should catch up. She also refollowed me on social media again. I don't want to make things awkward, but I was really hurt when she abandoned me. It feels like I'm only good enough to be her friend when I'm dating Luke, and that sucks. How do I interact with her without making things awkward for everyone else? Too long didn't read. My best friend ditched me for my ex and his friends after we broke up. Now that my ex and I are dating again, she wants to be friends again. Emo, she's shown you her true colors. She's not your friend. She's friendly when convenient. I would be polite and neutral back to her. There's no reason to go out of your way to be mean to her, but there's also no reason to go out of your way to be friends with her either. There are probably friends of Luke's that you have an acquaintance-like relationship. You are friendly in passing, but you're not inviting them to places that the rest of the group as a whole isn't also invited to. That's your relationship with her. Grey rock technique is the answer here unless you want a fake friend. What does Luke think of how Cindy treated you? Does his group realize what she did to you? According to him, she told them I stopped talking to her because she wanted to still be friends with them, and when she told me I just blocked her without warning. ETA, he thinks what she did was pretty shitty. You do not need to reconnect with her or be her friend. She simply exists in the friend group of you boyfriend. Beyond being polite, if she is around, ignore her, as she isn't worth your energy or time. I wouldn't pick up that friendship again. Since she's part of the friend group, I'd be cordial, but I wouldn't trust her with personal stuff. F her, she is not your friend. Found out my 29F husband, 32M, and in-laws have done some shady stuff in the past, and I can't look at them the same way, but I'm stuck living with them. My husband and I have been staying with my in-laws at their house for the past month. His sister and her family are also staying here. Last week, we were all drinking after dinner and my Phil was reminiscing about how he got his big break in life. He outright admitted to doing some shady business practices, including bribing and blackmailing people. He also admitted to an insurance scam that went wrong. Their entire family was just laughing it off like this was normal and not completely disgusting. I'm not very good at hiding my emotions, so when my Phil called me out on it, I just pretended I wasn't feeling well and excused myself. Then yesterday, I was talking to my Sil and she was bragging about how great her boyfriend was with her kids and how he treated them all like his own and he was much better than her ex-husband. She was with her ex whilst my husband and I were dating, and he was always a devoted dad, but one day he just up and left, completely abandoning his family. I still seemed devastated at the time. My husband always told me he was cheating and left his family for his mistress, but my Sil admitted that it was her who was cheating with her current boyfriend, and that her brother and dad helped clean up her mess like they always do. She was gushing about how her family always looked out for her and she was so lucky, but she wouldn't go into detail on what they actually did to convince her ex to give up his kids. I casually mentioned it to my husband, and he got very defensive. When I asked what he'd done, he kept shrugging it off and saying it wasn't important. I know he's mentioned it to his family because my Mill told me my imagination was worse than what really happened. We're supposed to be staying here until New Year's, but I can't look at any of them the same way after finding this all out. I just have a sinking feeling in my gut every time I look at my husband. What do I do now? Too long didn't read. My husband and in-laws have been involved in some shady business practices and somehow convinced my Sil's ex to abandon his children. I can't see them the same way anymore. Reach out to your Sil's ex-husband. He's been in your exact spot before. He might be willing to guide you. I messaged him but he hasn't replied yet. Your husband's behavior in covering for the rest of them tells you the apple didn't fall far from the tree. One of the biggest reasons for relationship failures is incompatible values and moral compass. I can't be with someone who doesn't share my sense of right and wrong. You'll have to decide what that means for yourself. Your husband and his whole family are showing you big ass red flags. Get out now. Do you really want to be in a relationship with someone who hides things like that from you? Because what's happened sounds serious, and if you got on the wrong side of them, who knows what would happen, especially if there was children of your own involved. I'd pack up my shit and leave immediately. You want them to do this to you? No, get out. Is your personal information safe? Do you have a lock on your credit reports? How often do you check your credit reports? Do you know where your important documents are? Passport, SS card, birth certificate, etc. Stay safe. I got the chills reading your post. I almost wish it was fake.